Hi everybody, welcome to the latest of our series of video interviews where we try and get together some interesting people from the industry. Today I'm really chuffed, we've been joined by James, who's one of the senior guys at Zoom EV, who we're doing a bit of business with here in the UK, a very innovative company. Welcome James, and I'm going to hand over to him. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself, and then we'll get into hopefully an interesting dialogue about emerging mobility and where it's going. Hi, James.
Yeah, hi Ed. Good to see you, and hi everyone. Yeah, I'm James Jean-Louis. I've actually spent over 30 years in the automotive sector, and in 2010 I set up one of the first electric vehicle charging equipment supply and installation companies in the UK, and that's at a time when there were only 5 plug-in cars on the market. I sold that business in 2014 to Chargemaster PLC and became their group commercial director. And then in 2018, Chargemaster PLC was actually sold to BP. And that, I guess, shows how important the uptake of EVs has become in a very short space of time when you see, the biggest companies in the world and in the oil and gas sector buying a company. And now I've gone effectively from startup to startup, back up through my involvement in Zoom EV, and I'm their group commercial director, having invested in the business as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, James. So tell us, Zoom EV, tell us a bit about the business and how they position themselves. I mean, obviously I know lots of it, but I'm sure the people listening to this will be interested in your take in it. So anything like, what does Zoom EV do and what's the vision of the business would be really interesting.
Of course, yeah, I'm happy to do that. So Zoom EV is an electric mobility service provider, and we help make the change from ICE, which is petrol and diesel cars, to electric vehicles an easy one. We've actually got 3 main streams to the business. Firstly, we have the UK's first electric car sharing platform, and that enables utilisation of idle vehicles, which before COVID was actually around 95% of the time that vehicles weren't used. So our sharing platform is for individual car owners. It's suitable for local authorities to use their fleet cars and pool cars, and of course for businesses. And also for car dealers. And we're doing a huge amount with car dealer groups currently, where they're putting their demonstrator cars and available cars on the platform. Secondly, we've got our EV driver benefits bundle, and that's a benefits package that gives EV drivers everything they need to have the best experience whilst saving money at the same time. And we include the best in home charging, public charging, home energy and parking services. And then we also finally help individuals and businesses with insurance for EVs. And our vision in terms of where we're planning to go is to be the leading electric mobility service in the UK and beyond.
Brilliant, James. That's 3 great answers. Tell me this, there's the big $1 million question then. So why specialize just in EVs? Tell me a bit about, I mean, obviously, as you said, you've been in this EV world when there was, 5 cars. Tell us why EVs. Tell us what you think.
It's a very simple and short answer. EVs are the future. And you only have to look at the huge growth and the huge uptake in electric vehicles compared to the dramatic downturn in registrations of diesel and petrol vehicles. And you've just got to look at the statistics that are published every month to see that EVs are definitely the future.
And it's worth saying, James, that we believe similar. Trōv believe that emerging mobility and the future sustainable transport, whether it's 4 wheels, 2 wheels, kick scooters, bikes, delivery, EV has a huge part to play. And as you say, when there's some very big multinationals buying businesses like Chargemaster, you understand that there's a lot of people pointing in the same direction. However, there still are some reservations, James, amongst consumers regarding electric, and not just consumers. There's an interesting article last week. I think one of the big dealer groups said something about I can't remember the exact but it was something around the actual cost of owning an EV, the way it's reported, isn't correct. They believe there was more to it. But what, from your perspective, you know, what's the barriers before buying an EV, and why is that not a big an issue? And where do you see it becoming easier and easier for people to own? I would caveat that by saying that I drove an EV, a fully EV vehicle, about 6 weeks ago for the first time. And I myself, James, got into it thinking, right, is this different? No, but actually, you know, it just isn't. I mean, it just isn't. So I'd love to know what you guys think about what has historically probably been some of this sort of reservation, and how now it's being overcome.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's really interesting, and I'm glad to hear you're getting into EVs, and I'm sure you had a good experience. I always say to people, you've got to get in one and you've got to try one. But I explained earlier on that I've been in this sector right from the start in the UK, and I'll go back to, I think it was 2011, maybe 2012, and I had borrowed a Nissan Leaf, one of the first generation Nissan Leafs, and I remember going somewhere to pick some people up from the railway station, and when I went, it was dry, and you know, I was on my own, and by the time I got to pick them up, it was wet, cold, 4 people in the car with their luggage, and we had the journey home that was the same as what I'd gone. And dare I use the expression squeaky bum moment, but that's the closest I've ever became, because the range of those early cars were, you know, 70, 80 miles. And I remember getting home and having 5 or 6 miles range left on the clock, as it were. So, but now, I mean, and having said that, there are many myths that need to be busted that create the barriers that you're talking about. Charging, battery technology, and charging availability are probably the main areas to look at. Actually, 90% of all charging is actually done at home. And many specific energy tariffs for home energy means that you can actually do these for free. You know, the cost of energy, if you use off-peak hours, can either be from, you know, extremely low, or so the cost is you know, considerably less than people think, providing you do it properly. I drive a full electric car, and I'm always being asked, how long does it take to charge that car? And I always say, it takes me 2 minutes. And they go, wow, you must have a really super fast charger. And I said, no, I plug it in, I get home, I plug it in, and I go to bed. And when I get up in the morning, the car's charged. So I'm, you know, between the time I get home and the time I need the car the next day, you know, the car is charged. But battery technology is probably the biggest thing in terms of changing people's views. Now, I mean, as I say, I talked about driving that first generation Nissan Leaf, but now the range on most EVs is well over 200 miles. And I kind of defy anyone to drive more than 200 miles in one stretch without at least needing a comfort break or a coffee or something, particularly on UK roads. But, you know, we're hearing ranges of 300 plus of new cars and new battery technology. And in some cases, like the Nissan Leaf, the car is similar size, but the batteries, in some cases, maybe a little bit smaller, but the efficiency and the range of those batteries with new technology is much greater. And that's only set to improve. And charging times are coming down as well. And the public charging network, which is the other thing I referred to, that's grown considerably over the past 10 years. And being part of the ChargeMaster team, you know, the network growth for the Polar charging network was something that was, you know, a huge amount of effort gone into. And there are more charging stations than petrol stations in the UK. And most hotels, supermarkets, gyms, destinations, they all include charging facilities for either destination or on-the-go charging. So those myths, when you get into an EV and live with one every day as I do, you soon realize actually there's nothing to worry about. And then when the quality of the ride, because of the quietness and so on, and acceleration if you need it, is incredible.
Yeah, well, Jim, that's a very well put. It's interesting that I was recently on a bit of a holiday or break in Ireland, and were at this pretty half decent hotel, and they had literally about 6 electric charging stations and 1 car on it. And I can't pretend it wasn't frustrating, James. So, you know, I hope obviously even the hotel groups are seeing into the future that more and more people will charge them, because when I had to, it was raining, because it was Donegal, it was Ireland, so obviously it was raining. So I had to park my car further away so my kids could have to walk during the rain. Whereas if I had an electric car, James, I could have parked right outside the hotel. So there you go. I should have had one. One other thing on the sort of concerns. Talk to me, James, of your feeling on the cost. So the vehicle cost itself. When do you think the parity is? You know, what are the pieces that make an electric? Obviously there's huge savings, James. When you get one, you don't have to pay for diesel, petrol, whatever it is. But what are the pieces that make up the cost that you see in the future can only come down to make the parity between a overall diesel cost, or diesel vehicle or petrol vehicle versus an electric vehicle?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ed. Some years ago, and it's not that many years ago, cost was a big obstacle, and cost was a big consideration when you're looking at the possibility of getting into an EV. Now, however, the thing that you have to look at is what's called the total lifetime ownership cost, or TLC, or total lifetime cost of ownership is the phrase that you refer to. And I mean, I use an example of the cost of the cars has been expensive. I mean, there are some, you know, you can spend well over £100,000 on, you know, a super brand of electric car. But now, I mean, I had some notification today of a 5-door estate car being launched on the market at, you know, £23,000, and it, you know, mainstream cars. So the cost of cars is coming down. And also, don't forget, there's a growing used EV market as well.
That's true. That's a good point, James. Yeah.
I think that's a very, you know, strong point to consider. And I always say to people that when they say, oh, the cost of them, there's a growing, I mean, you've only got to go on Auto Trader and put in pure electric car, and you'll have, you know, thousands and thousands of possibilities. So that helps that cost barrier. But having said that, even forgetting the cost of the vehicle, and this is very much headline number. So if you've got a petrol or diesel car and you're going to drive 100 miles, approximately, because there's been some fluctuation in oil prices, so petrol and diesel prices have changed. But I use a headline number of, to do 100 miles costs about £18, just as a headline number. It depends in the country where you live and whether you only get your fuel in a cheaper supermarket and so on. But it's about £18. Compare that to less than £5 for the same energy cost, electricity cost, to drive the same 100 miles in an electric car. So when you look at the total cost of the car and the fact the battery technology means you can drive further, again, the barriers and the concerns come down. So
yeah, no, it's a
lifetime cost.
It's a very good point, James. And people often, I mean, I think the industry needs to talk more about that. You know, they need to talk more about the second-hand market, I think. I need to talk about more of the overall cost of the. Interestingly, a friend of mine, I've noticed as well, James, I lease cars. I tend to lease cars. I've noticed leasing costs, if electric is coming down, you're starting to get some good offers around. A friend of mine just got the new all-electric Mercedes, the IQ, is it the
EQC?
EQC, beautiful vehicle, and
Mercedes have just launched the EQA, which, if anyone's familiar with the A-class Mercedes, half the price of the EQC. So it's, you know, and it's based on the A-class size, full electric.
No, it's good to see, and I think the industry needs to talk more about that. The industry needs to, because there's still some of these myths around that. You know, the barrier to entry, but
myth busting is key.
Yeah. So tell me, if we move on a bit, Zoom have just completed a crowdfunding round, which is fabulous. Congratulations on that, James. Tell us why Crowdcube. Tell us why you think you were successful, and tell us a bit why you guys thought crowdfunding was the right thing for you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I mean, having started a business, it sold a business, being part of a team that sold it again, started again, and being involved in investment of a business as well, and funding. It's the crowdfunding route was new to me. But as a startup, Zoom EV is a startup, it was always part of our plan to have an investment round. So that's something we'd always planned to have. And because of the exposure that crowdfunding gives you as a startup is one of the reasons we went down that route. And of course, there's a financial benefit because you raise money. So added to this, the investor user base that comes with it. So for example, with crowdfunding, we had investors that invested with Zoom from as little as £10. And they become part of the family, and they become aware, and they talk to people, and that's, you know, from a whole range from, you know, £10 upwards. And I'm really delighted to say that the round was very successful. We closed at 113% of the investment of what we requested. But the key thing is, and I talked about investor user base, we actually had around 600 investors in the total to raise that. So that becomes your extended family, for one of the
600 fans, big fans.
Yeah.
Tell me this, have you checked with them, and many of them drive electric vehicles, James?
Well, interesting enough, so many of them have been in touch with us that don't. But they, again, you know, going back to the point I made earlier, they see EVs as the future, and they want to be part of that journey, and really appreciated what we did. So we felt, rather than going down the traditional finance investment route and equity or whatever route you go down, the crowdfunding really worked for us. And as I say, the user base that we got, that we can grow with and became part of the family, was really important. So we got the investment, we overfunded, we're off. It means, you know, we got a lot of plans for the future.
Brilliant. James, I'm conscious of time here. Tell me this, the $1 million question. So what's next for Zoom? What's around the corner? You've got funded, you've got 600 new fans, you've got fabulously blue t-shirts. You know, what's next? Yeah, what's next? I think they're one of the nicest I see. But what's next for Zoom?
Yeah, well, clearly, you know, we have a roadmap in terms of what our plans were, and you know, part of the roadmap was the funding. So having secured and finalized the round means we're off effectively. We're zooming ahead, as we all say. And we're now in the process of developing large auto dealer groups. We actually working with some of the largest ones in the UK. We actually had a large dealer group sign up with us to two things: use the driver benefits bundle for their electric car drivers and put their demonstrator cars on our bundle. So it means, in terms of business development, that's a huge thing for us, and it enabled us to do that and now become part of that's auto dealer group's e-mobility service. We were actually also approached by SSE Energy to be their launch partner for their new fix and drive home energy tariff, which is launched next month. And we're going to include that, or we are including that, into our driver benefits bundle. And that gives EV drivers around 8,000 free miles of energy on that specific tariff. But we're also working on some really exciting new additions to the service, which, being in the position we're at now, having gone through the crowdfunding raise, means we can accelerate the growth of the business and add some really exciting services onto the business and roll out all the things that was our vision when we started.
Brilliant. Well, James, listen, thank you so much for spending some time. You're a very busy man. Can I just say that, having dealt with yourself, Greg, Jeff, we find your business really interesting. We hope we'll be part of it, and we look forward to spend some more time with you guys over the next few months. James, thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Ed, and your team. Thank you.